Today's lesson is on solving equations by multiplying and dividing. You solve these problems the exact same way you solved the one-step equations by adding and subtracting. It's just that this time you're going to undo by multiplying or dividing. So let me walk you through a few of these, and I think it should be fairly easy for you. So before we move on, I need to make sure that you understand how these problems are written. So x over 2 would be x divided by 2. So whenever you see a problem written as a fraction like this, it means divided by. So this problem means x divided by 2 equals 12. This, we've been doing this for a while when we evaluate expressions, that 2x means 2 times x. And so again, just like when we solve other one-step equations, to solve, we're always going to ask ourselves, what's my variable? What's with my variable on the same side of the equation? How do I undo that using an inverse operation? And remember that my goal is to isolate the variable. And as always, what I do to one side of the equation, I must do to the other. So again, I'm going to ask, what's my variable? What's with my variable on the same side of the equation? How do I undo that using an inverse operation? And my goal is always to isolate the variable. And remember, what I do to one side of the equation, I must do to the other. I will repeat these things several times throughout the video. Remember, if you need to pause at any time while you're taking notes or rewind, you may do that. So the first problem is x divided by 2 equals 12. So again, ask yourself, what's my variable? And in this case, my variable is x. And what's with it? Divided by 2. How do I undo divided by 2? Well, I multiply by 2. What I do to one side of the equation, I must do to the other. And remember, I want to see this work on your paper. So I multiply both sides by 2. The whole reason I did that was to get rid of the 2 that's with the variable. So that's gone, and I'm left with x on the left side. And 12 times 2 is 24. So x in this case equals 24. So remember, you always want to check to make sure you've done everything correctly. And so I can substitute x back in to the original problem for my check step. So I'm going to substitute x back into the original problem up here. And so I would get 24 divided by 2 equals 12. And 24 divided by 2 is 12. And 12 does equal 12. Everything works out. I must have done everything correctly. Example 2 is 2x equals 20. So again, I'm going to identify my variable. My variable is x. What's with it on that same side of the equation? Times 2. How do I undo times 2 using an inverse operation? Well, I divide by 2. What I do to one side of the equation, I must do to the other. So why did I do that? Well, I wanted to undo the 2 that's with the x, the times 2. So I'm just left with x on the left. And on the right, 20 divided by 2 is 10. So the solution to this equation is x is 10. So again, I want to do my check step. So if I did everything correctly, then x is 10, then 2 times 10 should equal 20. 2 times 10 is 20, and yes, 20 does equal 20. Everything works out, and I can assume I did things correctly. Another example, example 3. Again, remember, you're supposed to be copying these and the work on your note sheet, exactly as I'm doing them here on my paper. And if you need to pause the video at any time, go ahead and do that. So the third example. X divided by negative 5 equals negative 3. So what's my variable? It's x. What's there with it on the same side of the equation? Divided by negative 5. How do I undo divided by negative 5? Well, I multiply by negative 5. What I do to one side of the equation, I must do to the other. So again, remember why I'm doing this. I'm trying to isolate my variable x. So x divided by -5 times -5. I've undone the divided by -5 by using the inverse times -5, and I'm just left with x over here. And -3 times -5 is 15. So x is equal to 15. Your check step, make sure you've done everything correctly. If I did, I substitute 15 back in for x. So 15 divided by -5 should get me -3. 15 divided by -5 is -3. And -3 does equal -3. So everything has been done correctly. Last example. (3x = 18). What's my variable? X. What's with it? Times 3. How do I undo times 3? I divide by 3. What do I do to one side of the equation? I must do to the other. Why did I do divided by 3? Well, I'm trying to undo the times 3. So I'm left with x on the left, and on the right, 18 divided by 3 is 6. If I've done everything correctly, my check step should work out. And so I substitute 6 back in for x, so 3 times 6 should equal 18. 3 times 6 is 18, and yep, 18 equals 18. My two sides equal each other. Everything works out. I'm done. So don't forget to, at the bottom of your page, if you have any questions, write them there and answer the last question, how ready you feel to move on with the lesson. And I will see you soon. Adios, amigos.
Made with Doodlecast Pro.